Hi, everybody. On this video, I just wanted to bring up some very interesting questions about the benefits that we see with modern medical technology and how they may be not quite aligned with being sovereign, being intuitive, being in the highest frequency, we'll say, for your own healing journey. So I'm going to bring in a couple of personal examples. So those of you who have followed me for a while know that I had leukemia at age 15. It relapsed at 20 and they had to put me on chemo again. And quickly into that second round, I went into heart failure from one of the known drugs that can cause heart toxicity called adriamycin. So I've kind of dealt with this issue throughout my adult life. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I had a lot of stress going on. I was transitioning into early menopause, and just literally my heart gave out. So it was pretty emergent. It was a really scary time for me, and I had to have a pacemaker put in. Well, let me rephrase that, 'cause you guys will see as you follow me, I'm very careful with my words. So I was blessed and lucky enough to have the beautiful opportunity of a biventricular pacemaker. And that at the time was a saving grace, because the other option was that the heart transplant doctor was at the foot of my bed. That's how bad I was. So I had this pacemaker put in. And at the time, I was so sick and so filled with gratitude for my cardiologist that I didn't ask any questions about the device. And they sent me home with a monitor. And one of the ways I've personally dealt with my medical issues throughout my life is just to go ahead and live my life, do what I needed to do, take action on the health issues, but enjoy my life the best I can. And the idea of a monitor sitting in my house to look at my heart rhythms or whatever it was supposed to do just didn't resonate. So I gave the monitor back, and I told my cardiologist I just wanted to come in periodically to make sure that the device was working. So that was 8 or 9 years ago. Knock on wood, I have done amazing. That's why I'm here teaching all of you, because I've brought in different peptides and stem cells and all the things that I've needed, along with deep, deep self-work on my own journey and my own needs. And as I've sat with all of that and continued to heal, it's been nothing short of miraculous. So when I got a buzzing in my chest to tell me that the battery was almost dead, I had to face the reality of going in for a procedure again. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. And when I went to see the cardiologist to get ready for it, I asked, well, is it smaller? Is there something exciting? Does the battery last longer now? Give me something for having to go through this. And the rep came in and he said, well, it's very exciting. It now has Bluetooth capacity. So let's just say he didn't love my response, which was, wait, what? They now these devices can emit Bluetooth technology so you can track your heart on your phone. Now, if you're a straight up cardiologist or a straight up biohacker, might sound really fascinating to be able to look in real time at what your heart is doing. To me, it was actually horrifying, because the idea that they would put in a frequency that's not good, especially for heart rhythm, inside my chest, made me question everything once again. So I said, I don't want that. I would like to go back to whatever we did with pacemakers before that was an option, and I'll just come in and have it checked periodically. So they reluctantly agreed. I got to the hospital to get the procedure done, and the rep came in. It was a different rep. Told me the same thing. Oh my God, it's so exciting. We have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capacity. And I said, no, I don't want that. And then my cardiologist said, you have a lot of VIPs now that want that feature turned off because they don't want to be tracked. Fine, I can be a VIP. I know enough to say, turn that off in my chest. My concern came up just like it did 20 years ago when I was dealing with an eye doctor that wanted to operate. And it's a deep compassion for all of you and all the other people out there with these great devices who don't know how to say no. And the doctors as a whole don't see an issue. So they get annoyed and they'll pressure the patient. And I don't have a direct answer for this right now. I just wanted to bring it up as an interesting and crazy topic. And so as I was rolling in to the room, the anesthesia nurse said, you and I were chatting, and she was asking me what I do, and I told her integrative medicine, and she's all excited. She does essential oils, and she does sauna. And so I said, cool, you're a sister. When I'm asleep in there, I need you to make sure all of this tech is turned off. Well, you guys, I didn't realize until maybe the next day as I was recovering. The procedure went great. I'm doing fine, working on the scar with red light. It wasn't until the next day that I started thinking. And I realized that box they gave me 8 years ago, that I have been living the past 8 years with a Wi-Fi emitting device inside of my chest. Now, I've been able to heal. I've been able to do a lot of incredible things. And I was in no shape to tell them to turn it off back then. But can you imagine how much better my body's going to do now that I don't have that? So just food for thought. Let me know what you guys think, where maybe you've experienced similar interesting questions in your own head about these technologies. And then the crazier side of the story, it's even crazier, is that 2 weeks later, I had to go and had the gift of being able to go have my be by the bedside with my dad. And my dad, knock on wood, also super healthy in 81. He was born with a bicuspid aortic valve, which is a congenital birth issue that is not a huge deal. It just means that there's 2 leads to the valve instead of typically there's 3. So it's more likely to get stenotic as you get older. And a lot of times you end up needing a valve repair. So they knew this about him, that he was probably going to need a valve repair about 20 years ago. But because my dad is super healthy, taking 9 million vitamins from me, and he ran marathons when he was younger. Don't recommend marathons, by the way, because it can lead to a lot of arthritis and other problems. But because of my dad's health, he was able to wait a lot longer than a lot of people. And the technology, so here's the plug for the technology. The technology got to the point where he didn't have to have his chest cracked, which is the old way that they can, only way they can repair the valve is the same way they did open heart surgery. They'd have to go in through the chest wall, which is a very tough recovery. So now they've had this out for about 20 years, this procedure through the groin, almost like going in for a heart cath, and they can replace your valve that way. It's unreal. This is unreal. So having immense gratitude for medical technology, and this is why I tell you guys all the time, I am not on one or the other side. I am a bridge, and I'm just asking questions. So he goes in, he gets this procedure done. It went beautifully well. And when it was time to leave, said, we're super excited. We're going to, when we put this valve in, sometimes it can be close to the electric system. So we're going to monitor his rhythm for 2 weeks. So they put this external monitor on his chest, and he has to hold something about the size of a phone within 10 feet of his body for the next 2 weeks. So we get home, and mind you, it was a very stressful time, especially for my mom, who just went through me having a procedure, now my dad. And so we were packing up quickly because the guy came to transport us out of the hospital. And my mom was making sure, checking everything over and over again. Do we remember everything? And we get home, and she says, I can't find that little monitor. We must have left it at the hospital. Okay. Panic, frustration, anger. I call the hospital. They say there's no signs of it. Asked the nurse to call the doctor, and it was a fellow who was covering for his doctor who had gone on vacation. And basically the call I got back was, and my dad had fallen asleep at this point, so happy to be home, hadn't been sleeping well, obviously. They said, well, our only option is for him to go to the emergency room, and he'll have another one replaced. And we let that doctor know. Okay, guys, can we have a call for critical thinking, please? I sat there after the first bit of, oh my God, my dad's going to freak out. And I just took a breath. I paused. And I said, this is not rational. I didn't know how to reach the fellow. So I ended up calling the doctor on call for my dad's doctor, who was on vacation. Very nice guy. And I said, hi there. Listen, I'm an internist in Tampa. I don't want to override anybody's clinical decisions, but my dad just got home. He's asleep. He's doing amazing. We can't find the monitor. He is supposed to go to the emergency room, and it's Saturday. And I think if he has to sit for hours in an emergency room, probably arrhythmias in and of itself. And do we have to do this, or can we wait till we go to the clinic on Monday? And so he completely agreed with me. Yeah, I think that's right. It's okay. fast forward, the fellow who didn't know I had called the doctor calls my dad, wakes him up out of his sleep, and tells him to go to the emergency room. So I had to intervene. Anyway, the point of this story, because there was a funny ending to it, because eventually we found the monitor after all of that. But I just wanted to share the story as a glimpse into where has medicine lost that compassion or that critical thinking. Just because we can monitor something, listen, that chest monitor was probably not even around 6 months ago, and he would have just been home doing fine. Can we keep that respect for the patient's journey, that sovereignty of the patient, that understanding that they have their own hands in the healing? Where can we keep that alive? So share with me where maybe you guys have had experiences like this, hopefully not quite this crazy, questions, and let's keep this conversation going. It's an important one.